I didn't realize it was going to be such a critical thinking situation. I started drinking wine at the beginning. It's the end of the day. Happy hour with Matt. And then I was like, Jesus, I got to think straight. I got to stop drinking.
All right. Welcome to the program, Helena Goto. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah. So, Helena, we had some fun setting up the audio, and now we can record this well and hear each other. So thanks for your patience, or as we say in Japan, gambaru, to fight through it. Yes,
that's a good word, gambaru.
Yeah,
I'm going to use it on my husband later. Gambaru.
Yeah. Every Japanese knows gambaru or gambarimasu. It's like I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to work hard no matter what.
Why didn't he teach me this word already? This is
it's a good one.
It could be our motto of our lives together. Gambaru.
Well, now, I'm sorry to bring that up. So your last name, Goto, is Japanese, yes?
It is.
All right. Care to share how that happened?
Because I married a Japanese man.
You don't sound Japanese. What's going on there?
Well, originally from New Zealand. And I had a little bit of a process. So I was Bevan, and then I became Bevan Goto. And then, because it's really hard to go from Bevan to Goto, it's a big change.
That would be, yeah.
And so it took me a minute. But then I had 3 children, and who are the Goto boys. Yeah. And so I wanted to be a Goto. I didn't want to be a Bevan.
You didn't
Goto.
want to be left out, basically.
I didn't want to be left out. I was like, I'm a Goto. So my mother was horrified. It's like, why? Yeah. Because she wants me to carry on the family name.
You know, it's a hard one. And it's harder for women, of course, because, you've got all these. I mean, my wife and I had this whole discussion about, she's Japanese, so it's like she doesn't really want to let go of her name. And I felt bad. But then we were thinking longer term just about legal matters and just kind of the tedium of having a different name. So
also, my last name, Bevan, is spelled like beaver with an N.
Oh.
And in New Zealand, that's not a problem because we don't have beavers.
Right.
But a beaver is...
Yeah.
Well,
I'm originally from Oregon, so it's the beaver state. So we look at it a little bit differently.
So for New Zealanders, a beaver is a direct reference to a vajayjay.
Right.
So I would be horrified when I first came over here. I'd be like, Miss Beaver. I'd be like, it's Bevan.
It might limit your career choice, your career options. You wouldn't want to pigeonhole yourself there.
Go to Beaver.
Oh my goodness, this is going off the rails fast.
Anyway, so yes, I am Helena Goto.
Yes. And originally, you're a Kiwi, so you're from... Now, what part of New Zealand are you from?
The North Island. I'm from a very small...
Yeah.
A place we call... Well, I call it Hammer Hole.
Yeah.
Some people call it Hammer Vegas. And
it's all the casinos or what? Hammer Vegas.
Yeah. It's just the opposite of Vegas, basically. Yeah. It's called Hamilton, and New Zealand is basically just a big long island. Yeah. Everything is on the coast, except for Hamilton. Hamilton's right in the middle.
It's the breadbasket.
It's and it's misty and it's cold. It's very.
Oh, so it gets that kind of fog that rolls in?
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
What's it called? Pea soup fog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was born in Eugene, Oregon, and I've lived there 3 times in my life, even though I've lived all over. And it's like a bowl there, too. It's like where it's located, it gets this crazy fog and haze, and it rolls in and just fills up the whole town. You can't see anything. That's what it sounds like to me.
It is. Yeah. It's so depressing.
It's a shire. So how sick are you of hearing about Lord of the Rings? Yeah. Did you even watch those movies?
I did. But funny story is when I first came to America, nobody had even heard. I went straight to New York City. Mm-hmm. And everyone I met was like, oh my God, you're from New Zealand? I've never met anyone from New Zealand. Where is New Zealand? What borders New Zealand? Is it part of Europe, right? Is it Switzerland? And I'd be like, oh my God. The people thought I lived in a hut And
yeah.
And then anyway, so then it was like there's the before the Lord of the Rings and then after Lord of the Rings. Before the Lord of the Rings, nobody knew anything, and then after it, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm from New Zealand. It's so beautiful. Oh, the countryside
and those little people
and the little people."
yeah, yeah. Well, it is a. I truly aspire. I've been in Australia. I'm a couple times, but New Zealand is on the list. I mean, it just every interchange I have with people in New Zealand, it makes me want to go more. So, but you've been in the States for a long time, yeah?
I have. Nearly 20 years. Oh, 20 years.
20 years.
Yep.
So what's it like? I mean,
I obviously came over when I was 3 years old.
Well, clearly.
6. My kids think I'm 26.
Yes. Keep that rolling.
I'm not telling them the truth because they tell everybody everything. I'm going to tell them
no, hashtag no filter.
Exactly.
So I'm just curious because I've been an expat for a long time and I've moved back and forth and stuff, and so I kind of relate to sort of those moments when you realize there's like something bubbles up and you're like, oh yeah, I'm not from here, in some weird way, like or a connection to your hometown. What are those moments for you now when you go, oh yeah, that was definitely a thought from my home?
When I said to my son, hey, pass me the rubber, and I meant a razor. That just happened. Homeschooling.
That's pretty good.
What else? Kiwis are just so helpful. Like we just want to get along and get on and help each other out. And everybody kind of like, what's the word? Like gets on board. Like it's a team sport.
Right.
And I'm always shocked when I see people not taking care of their neighbor or like just walking past somebody and not saying, are you okay? Or can I help you? Or it's just a different, it's like we don't have, I don't know if we have unions, but we don't have that sort of like, this is your job. You only do this. You'll get in trouble if you do that. No, if you're there, you do everything. And I think that mentality for me, I love that whole, like everybody pitches in.
Yeah.
So when I'm in a situation where people aren't doing that, I get really like, what is happening?
Why are we so self-centered? There's something about island living, though, island places, that there's a commonality because it's like you're literally on an island. And I've always felt like, in Japan, even in Hawaii, other places, there's a sense of we're kind of isolated out here. And if something happens to us, we're all in it together. I don't know if that's true, but I've had that sense. I don't know if that's...
Well, I think, I mean, I haven't, like I said, I haven't been in New Zealand for 20 years, lived there. But, the people that settled in New Zealand, they were immigrants. Obviously they're immigrants, but they were not the rich. They were not the poorest. They were not the convicts. But they were
I don't know what you're talking about.
They were just people that came over here and they had the resilience to survive in what was an incredibly rough place to be.
Yeah.
It was incredibly, the Māori people were very, very powerful, and it was challenging. So it's a kind of spirit that is with that people.
Yeah.
I think there's been mass immigration. In the last 10 years, I think New Zealand has one of the fastest. We've literally doubled our population in the last 20 years.
Right.
So that's had a massive impact, I guess, culturally.
I'm sure it has.
I'm not really, I don't have a front row seat to that. So
yeah. Wow. So give the listeners a little overview of we know you're from New Zealand, but what about your career, your other aspects that might be interesting for people to know about you?
Well, I won a trip on the radio in New Zealand. It was called the Hollywood Experience. And it meant that they put us up in Anaheim, which, if anybody knows, LA is not Hollywood.
It is not Hollywood.
But they thought, well, Disneyland's in Anaheim, so Anaheim must be
close enough.
Close enough. So, I ended up winning a green card after that, and then moving back to America, and I haven't left since. I was a physical therapist in New Zealand, and I used to work on the Hercules and Xena sets.
Okay.
Not so much the sets. I used to work for the American actors would come out and they'd call me in because they'd, just wrapped and so-and-so had a sore back and could you go and work on him? And so I created some, like Ted Raimi, Sam Raimi's brother, played one of the roles, and he was such a great guy, and like just these people that when I eventually came here, I was able to reach out and be like, hey, I'm in LA. And so I ended up becoming like this therapist. I was never qualified. I never like sat the exam to become a physical therapist, but I was like a overqualified massage therapist.
I see.
And so I ended up massaging and traveling the world with some incredibly interesting, successful people. And then like 10 years into that, I'm like, damn, I'm a massage therapist. Like, what happened? And I was going into people's lives where they were having these like gorgeous, like the lifestyle. The lifestyle of the rich and famous. And then I was going home to my little 1-bedroom in West Hollywood. And I was like, I got to do something else. So got my MBA. And I say that like that was really easy. It wasn't. And then I met my husband, and I now have a business where I help people really navigate the trials and tribulations of work and working with people dynamics.
Now I understand you kind of came up your path through to this work came through conflict resolution, mediation, that path. Is that?
Yeah. So I after my MBA, the only class I loved was negotiation and mediation, which I then went and got a master's in dispute resolution. And the full circle story there is that I start teaching dispute resolution at USC in the fall. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh, wow. Okay. You're teaching.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm going to be teaching master students how to,
But you've been teaching before. You've taught before, right? I feel like I thought you had some prior teaching.
Not master students.
Okay.
Right? Like
got it.
I'm going to be called Professor Goto. That's what I'm going to require people to call me.
You sound a little. Maybe I'm not. You sound both excited and a little nervous. Am I not?
Oh my God! Are you kidding me? I'm terrified.
What are you terrified of, though? Like, what's your version of it? Is it the questions that they're going to hit you with?
You know what? You know what it is? I'm actually not very academic. I just, how people can fill up 100 pages saying something. I don't have that many words. I don't need to make it so hard. I could say it in 10 pages.
Okay.
And I feel like academia is very much about my God, the books, and I want to make it very real. And so I'm interviewing a bunch of really interesting people right now who are in public policy, because it's a school of public policy that I'm teaching at.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to bring it home to what the reality of using these skills in the real life, because I think that I'm much more even though I have a couple of master's degrees, I'm much more school of hard knocks. Yeah. Kind of like
practical application.
Practical application. Yeah. And God, I could not stand when they'd be teaching you something like Black-Scholes equation. I'd be like, just tell it to me. Like, what are you trying to say? Like, just please apply this.
Run it through Apple's marketing machine and give me the 3-word answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm a little concerned that I might not be academic. I don't know. It'll be fine.
We all have a role to play. Even in academia, you've got people who are great at writing really complex stuff and going deep into theory, and that's important. And then you have people who are more on the practical, the practicum side, if you will. And that's so important. So I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes.
Anyway, so
you're going to love it. You're going to love it.
I am going to love it.
I know you're going to love it.
I mean, I'm doing trainings. I work at a university as an ombuds, and I'm doing trainings every week now on Zoom on having difficult conversations and like elevating communication. And I love it. I love chatting to everybody and getting them excited about how they can apply it and, making it real.
So you were saying you got a master's in dispute resolution.
Yeah, from Pepperdine Strauss Institute.
Yeah.
And then I started, first of all, I started mediating. Well, I started looking into all the different areas of mediation.
Right.
And I realized that it was predominantly dominated by white, older male lawyers, ex-lawyers or judges.
Yeah.
And I just thought I can't even begin to I'm not even going to try to beat that, like, just to be that. And so I ended up coaching and also bringing what I knew about business and into coaching and like business and life. And I've got a pretty balanced life. And well, I say that, but so I started coaching, and in that, because the people that I was coaching were really incredibly successful business people, I ended up, like, took me into the business world, and starting to help people within teams, and really just about communicating.
What do people not get about dispute resolution, disputes? Anything around that? What is it people don't get, that you kind of myths you have to dispel?
That avoiding conflict, avoiding communication does not work. The whole, if I just pretend this isn't happening. So a lot of the time I have conversations with people who are really upset about something, but really what they're upset about is not the conversation that they need to have. The conversation they need to have is, this behavior is making me feel whatever, and even just identifying it for themselves and letting people know what they need, setting people up to succeed, interacting with them. I'm someone that responds well to positive reinforcement, I'm not, or I am somebody that really needs to be able to do my job. I need to know 100% of what I'm doing before I can really thrive.
Yeah.
Right. So this training is going to make
that kind of stuff. So there's such a disconnect between, there's sort of the substance of an issue, and issues come and go, and then there's the human relationship underneath it. I think that's what you're saying. So it's like, are my human needs getting met in this conversation? Otherwise, the subject matter becomes a moot point, because all I'm hearing is how maybe threatened I am or whatever.
I think if I could distill it all down, it all comes back to your needs.
Yeah.
Like, what do I need? What do you need? And if we can create enough trust for me to honestly tell you what I need, and you tell me what you need, and we actually care because we're motivated to make this work, which most people in the workplace are. We work together every day. We want to we don't want to be miserable. Then we can make it work. But a lot of people don't even know what they need. It's just, I guess that's the thing that I unpack a lot when I'm having conversations is, I'm feeling nitpicked, and she's always criticizing and and it's like, but because why does that upset you so much? Well, because I need to feel appreciated. Like, I'm working really hard and I need to feel appreciated. Okay. So now you know what you need. Now you can let that person know how to meet that need. They can choose to or not, but at least you know what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such a challenge when people are upset, even when I'm upset, that, it can feel overwhelming that you're buried in all these things that actually aren't that important. You can be distracted by your own emotion and not really know what the real issue is, which is, I'm not feeling like you care about me or something,
Right.
Yeah.
But then what does that look like? What does caring look like to you?
Yes.
I don't feel like you care about me, but what does it look like?
And you're saying people can't even articulate that, I think is what you were saying.
They can't even get that first stage. Right.
Okay. Got it.
They can't get that first step of understanding what they need from that person. All they can understand is that they're feeling shitty and they're blaming the other person for making them feel shitty. But until you understand what the behavior is, you can't tell that person, I need you to acknowledge me when you walk in the room. Every time you walk in the room, I just need you to say hi. Yeah. When you walk in and don't look at me, that makes me feel dismissed.
Yeah. So listen, we'll go into this a little bit more, but I just want to give the rest of the picture here, because I know you've done a lot of dispute resolution, but you're doing more than that. I mean, you're doing coaching, right? You're working with teams, you're working with executives. Tell us more about some of the derivatives that how you built off of that.
So the most exciting thing for me at this point is the fact that in California, the Me Too movement blew up the expectation that HR is supposed to, and companies are supposed to, protect high conflict personalities that are making money for the company. Right? The companies have been set up, if you're bringing the money, I'm sorry, man, listen, you need to be quiet and go away so we can keep this person making money. I don't care that he or she. So suddenly all these, the Harvey Weinstein, everybody knew. Everybody knows about all of these, like the people that are high conflict and sleaze bags. It's very known. Why was it okay? Because that's the expectation. Well, the expectation has now changed. Right. Now it's like, okay, now we want to surface these issues and we want to take care of them before we start getting sued and whatever. But I don't know if people have the skill set to do it. Like you've got to be really honest and brave to bring things up when you're not in a position of power, or you're not sure whether or not what your part in it was, whatever. And I think that there's been a really big shift in where I am with companies going, we know that we are run predominantly by one perspective. 80% of us, statistically, 80% of upper management is white and male.
Sure.
In America, right?
Yeah.
So, and we know that that diversity, diverse perspectives are so important to the bottom line, to a successful culture, to everything. But we don't know how to do it, right? We don't know how to. We don't want to offend people, but we know we need to have conversations. We've got all these different perspectives in the workplace, and we're just, how do we do this? And I think that is creating a real shift in this piece of early dispute resolution that I'm passionate about, like fixing stuff before it's done damage and it's on fire. And like a lot of, so working as an ombuds, I'm the first step. Like if you've got a problem, and you don't quite know what to do with it, you're not sure if you're getting harassed, you're not sure if your manager is right about you not doing a job, whatever it is, I'm the first step where they come and say, like, this is what's happening. I'm neutral, it's confidential, and it's informal. So nothing's reported. It's just a place to,
it's a safe space.
Problems.
Yeah.
And it's a safe space, like creating a safe space. And, and I think that companies need that more than ever, because people expect to have a safe place now. HR, I think, wants to be the safe place, and I think in certain like smaller companies, HR can be, but I think it gets to a point where it's not quite mature enough to go to HR. Like I'm not ready to report my manager on the record. Like I'm not ready to go and make it like I'm just not quite sure. So to be able to have somebody that can hear you and see you, someone that listens to you,
right?
I just think that there's a huge shift in the workforce, and that this piece of this early dispute resolution that I've been really plugged into and passionate about for 10 years now is beginning to be embraced. And it's part of just educating people that it's an option, that it isn't HR. Like it's a different piece. It complements HR.
I kind of feel bad. Honestly, I feel bad for HR people a lot of the time, because if the wrong top leadership is there, then they'll just sort of be like, HR will handle it. HR will handle it. And they literally bunch in leadership development, talent development, metrics, performance evaluations, so salaries, hiring, fire, they'll just, and it's like, that's overwhelming. I don't know how any, unless you had a massive department.
Right. And most HRs are just, they don't, I mean, because it's not a revenue center, typically they're not well, like all the positions are filled and they've got space to sit down and really listen to this person for an hour and coach them on, I mean, I'm sure they could, but yeah. So my point is the fact that is becoming more valued.
Yeah.
That space is getting created. So that's what I really hope to dig that out, make that a thing, right?
Well, it's one of those things too, where if you had a really good way of measuring the performance of it, I mean, you'd find out that it saved you probably millions and millions of dollars.
Right. And I think the way there is a way to measure it, right? HR complaints, like people going to HR should decrease.
Yeah.
Not because people don't want to go to HR, just because those little issues are dealt with early and it's resolved. They don't build up, and then it's on fire.
Yeah.
People aren't suing as much. It really should have.
You should have lower insurance premiums, lower litigation costs, higher turnover. Retention. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the people who are walking, I mean, I know you can't disclose anything confidential and certainly wouldn't ask you about that, but just in the aggregate, what kinds of issues are you hearing about the most?
Honestly, I think I could say it is just inadequate communication. It's like, you're saying this, but I'm hearing that, and I'm not safe enough to check that out with you. Did you really mean to insult me then? Did you really mean to say whatever, right? Or just a lack of empathy, where the other people aren't able to even imagine the other person's situation. I just had a conversation with someone today, actually, as an ombuds, you call them visitors. So I had a conversation with a visitor right before this.
Yeah.
And I was able to say, it sounds like your supervisor is really struggling, right? Got all these kids, homeschooling, she's doing all this. She's got a really challenging supervisor of her own. She's been asked to do all this stuff. And so a lot of what's coming at you isn't personal, right? Yeah. And so just even having the ability to humanize the other party, but really just a full-on lack of knowing when to pick up the phone, knowing when to go and sit down and speak to someone in person, avoiding the honesty.
Yeah.
Like honestly dealing with the situation. That would be for me so much of the issues that I deal with day to day.
What kinds
of issues? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was just curious. What do you have at your disposal in a situation like that? Like, I mean, you're talking to one party, and of course, it takes two to tango always. So, what options do you have when it is a communication issue? There's not something that is important, but it's not like a bigger issue where you need to bring in, HR and lawyers. What are you able to offer them?
As an ombuds?
Yeah. Are you really in that kind of coach and consultant role, or can you bring in, like, if they need some other kind of support, do you reference them out, or what are your options? What do you have in your toolkit that you can give them?
Yes. Yeah. You can let them know what resources are available for sure. I think a big part of the toolkit is the reality checking of really honestly looking at the situation. What can you control? You can't control your manager. You can only control yourself. You can go and have this conversation, and if it doesn't work, this is a potential next step. And what do you want? And and I think for me as a coach, I always come back to the fundamental question: what do you want? What do you want? You know, I know your manager wants you to get this and do that and do this and then blah, 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 but do you want to be miserable day to day, trying to jump through these hoops? Do you want to not, whatever it is? But it's so funny. So many people just, nobody asks them that question. Like, what do you want? And yeah, so, that's what I got.
And what do you find people say to that? What's the answer?
Well, I mean, I've got a great example of I doing this just last week with a visitor where the person was trying to, like, I need to let my manager know that I'm really doing my job and I'm feeling really guilty. I don't feel like I'm being utilized and maybe they're pushing me out and I'm just totally depressed and I don't know what to do. What do you want? Well, I got to be honest. I really enjoy sleeping in an extra couple of hours every morning and I do take an afternoon nap. And okay, and so what is it about your job that you love?
Yeah.
I love this piece and I love that piece. Okay, so seems like there's other ways to do that. That sounds like really loving doing, like, whatever, this is this. And so let's say they were trying to push you out. How would you feel about that? You know, I mean, well, I have been thinking about retiring. You know, I am ready to retire, but I just don't. Okay, so you don't love your job. You feel miserable. You've been feeling miserable for 6 months. Is this what you want? No. What's important to you? Well, and then just by the time that phone call ended, that person was ready to write their retirement letter, like resignation letter, be like, okay, I'm out, peace out. And was so excited about their future.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing how, I mean, even if you do a ton of work on yourself and you're really intentional about it, even then you can still box yourself in. You know, you can still just sort of close off options and not even realize it until someone asks you, so why are you doing that? And it seems like such an obvious question, but until someone asks you, it's not, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's those of us that ask other people that all the time. And then when somebody else asks us, we're like, oh.
So what do you want, Helena?
I want to raise 3 boys that I have 3 boys. I want to raise them to be incredible men. I want them to be, I am so sick of hearing women say men are the inferior, you know.
Right.
But I say that and I get it, right?
Well, both things can be true. You can understand the inherent problem with that, but also understand where it's coming from, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't understand why.
Yeah.
Like I had a conversation with my friend today and we were talking about, she's like, I just don't understand. I just wouldn't even think to ask my husband, oh, could you get me a turkey sandwich? Oh, could you get me a cup of tea? Could you get me, like, expecting him to bring me everything? Like, maybe now and again when I'm tired, I'd be like, oh, could you get me a cup of tea? And she's like, there are people that just expect their partners, there are men that expect to be waited on. Like, what is that? Okay, so I just had that conversation today, so that's top of my mind.
That's fresh in the. Yeah.
How do I bring up 3 boys to be exceptional human beings who want a strong, independent, capable, vulnerable woman, right?
Yeah, yeah.
A woman that's able to be. That's one thing I want. The other thing that I want is for my business to create an opportunity to bring all of the people that I know that that are out there that want to be peacemakers, that want to do great things in the world and can't find that avenue. Like they can't find that track. There's community mediation. There's, you know, there's all these things, but they can't make a job out of it, right? So they've got to do this job that doesn't fit all of their skill set.
Right.
I think that there's room right now to create a world, a business opportunity for these people that are peacemakers.
Yeah.
To step in and get paid for doing something that they're talented at and that they love.
That phrase peacemaker kind of intrigues me, and you've mentioned it before in our other conversations we've had before this session, and I'd like to hear more about that. You know, why you use that phrase. It's a powerful term. It's a powerful word, peacemaker. And I feel like what keeps coming up for me in that word is forgiveness. You know, in some disputes, someone has, you know, you mentioned Weinstein, and you know there are people who do egregious things who then need to go through some kind of, you know, criminal justice or other civil system, and then there's no reconciliation that happens between them and their victims. But most cases involve some, I think, I'm asking you, but it seems to me that in most conflict situations, there is an opportunity and a path for forgiveness and reconciliation if people choose that. How do you know the difference between a situation where there's no reconciliation on the table ever and where it's possible? Where can peace be made?
I don't think that there's ever a situation where no reconciliation can be made. I don't think that hating somebody, blaming somebody is good for anybody's soul, right? To be able to grieve and move through it, if it requires sitting down, okay, yeah, let's talk about Harvey. Let's say,
yeah,
he's not going to apologize. He's not going to own the fact. And I know for a fact that this guy did the things he did. One of my good friends, two of my good friends were in situations with him where he did exactly how it was portrayed. You know, come to my hotel room. Hello, here I am in robe. I've got no pants on.
It's just an amazing industry.
I'll give you a 3-picture deal if you blow me, right?
Wow.
So, so let's say he's not going to admit his pain, or well, not his pain. Well, obviously he is in pain, but his part in it. But if you're a really talented peacemaker, to be able to sit down with Harvey, the perpetrator, and get him to see, it's so hard for perpetrators to see themselves. A lot of the time they see themselves as victims. But to see themselves, to trust you enough to realize that there is some value for them in hearing the other person, making the other person, finding out what the need of the other person is. Maybe it's just, you know what, I just want him to hear me. I just want him to hear what he did. And then for the other party to realize that, you know, to find out what their need is, to find out how you can create that they would actually sit there and listen. And
well, how would you do that with somebody like, most people aren't Harvey Weinstein, right?
Well,
I mean, most people haven't done what he's done. Of course, most people haven't had the opportunity to do because of the system he was in that allowed him to do that. But regardless of whether or not, you know, we're all capable of doing horrible things, which is true. Does reconciliation require both people to want it or to try for it? Or can one person just decide, I'm going to reconcile myself, notwithstanding what you decide to do?
Oh, I mean, I think so. I mean, it's harder.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I go back to Rwanda and what happened with the Hutu, the Tutsis. They had an incredible program that they set up, reconciliation program. And, you know, those were neighbors killing neighbors.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of them didn't, I mean, and what you didn't realize was, like, the people that had the machetes and went and killed their neighbor, they were threatened with being killed if they didn't do that.
Right.
And the pain of that situation, the pain of being the person that went and did that, and then the pain of the person who someone did that to your father.
Right.
And that's an incredible story. of people sitting down. There was one guy who literally would show up every day for months and months and months trying to say sorry. The person didn't want them to say sorry.
Right. They weren't ready,
and
or
sit and wait and just wait. And then finally the person let them in and was able to hear them. But they both needed to grieve. And I think that's a huge piece of being a peacemaker and knowing that both parties, I'm not really making sense.
It makes a ton of sense. That's clear as day.
Okay. It's being able to bring both parties to, like, as soon as you dehumanize somebody, that person's a fucking animal, you know?
Right.
You're done.
Yeah.
But most people aren't animal. Like, most people aren't that way. There's reasons. There's a way to find humanity, and it's about finding that humanity and giving people the opportunity to say sorry. Oh God, there are so many amazing reconciliation programs, like in prisons, and I watched one about this girl whose her mother's boyfriend murdered her, and she was brought up by grandma. I think she was very young. And he was in jail for the rest of his life. And then they had this reconciliation finally. And she was afraid. She had, like, for her whole life, she's afraid that he was going to come and kill her. And to sit down across from the man that killed her mother and have him weep and just say, you know, he doesn't even remember doing it. It was like this, a rage, whatever. And
a rage thing, yeah.
And it completely shifted her life. There's so much power in people being able to move on and let things go.
Right. But how do you do? These things apply in our offices too. They're not as horrendous. You know, people aren't murdering their coworkers, generally speaking, but they're murdering them with their words or ignoring them. So we have this idea that it's not personal, it's just business, and yet the reality is, right? It's all personal. As long as I'm a human being, I'm going to take things personally. So how do we apply this stuff in a workplace where people think that, well, you know, it's a different, where does reconciliation come in? It's work. It's just do your job, go home.
Right. And I think that there's a generation that feel that way, that you leave yourself at home, you go to work, you do your job, and then you come home and you're yourself again. This is not the world we live in anymore.
No.
It's completely different. So all of this is so much more valid now and valuable. I think apologies are really, I just did this training yesterday, and one of the big takeaways for the group was there's certain aspects of a good apology.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what's a good apology? Yeah.
Well, first of all, you have to let them know, you know what you did, right?
Right.
It's not like, I'm sorry you felt that way.
Yeah. I'm sorry you're upset.
I'm sorry you're upset. Oh
my
God.
You're weak, but I'm sorry about that.
You have to say, I am so sorry I spilt that red wine on your favorite dress from Spain.
Right.
Okay. You know exactly what you did. You know the impact. You will never be able to get that dress again. That was something that you got on that trip, and I know it was your favorite, and you're never going to be able to replace it.
Yeah.
Okay. Third step is, next time, what you would do differently. Next time, if you ever let me wear any of your clothes ever again, I will never drink red wine. I will drink white wine.
Right. Right.
But I will never drink red wine in your skirt. I promise I would never do that again. And then the fourth step is, how you're going to make it right. Listen, can I take you out for lunch? Let's have some white wine, and I'll take you shopping, and I'll buy you a new skirt. Yeah. Right. And then the person's like, oh yeah, she totally gets it. As opposed to, I'm sorry you're upset that I messed up your dress.
Yeah. Then you ask to borrow a piece of clothing to go out shopping. Has this happened to you? It sounds like the story sounds very vivid. It sounds like maybe this happened to you.
No.
Oh, okay. Maybe you lent your clothes to somebody.
No. I'm sure I have at some point.
Yeah.
It's a conversation I'd have with my best friend.
Yeah.
Like, it hasn't happened, but I imagine there's there's potential it would happen. That would be.
It's funny because it's a good example because it's totally realistic.
Right?
Yeah. At least for women, we don't really, most men don't borrow clothing, but I know.
No, but really there are so many things that happen that people don't really say sorry. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah.
No, you didn't apologize. It's not an apology. You're not sorry.
Yeah. 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 You're not owning it,
Right.
Owning it. I mean, I remember that. And gosh, I had this job right out of undergrad. I was working in the pager business, and
oh my God.
Yeah, when cell phones were getting big, and so it was kind of a dead end. But anyway, one of the things we did was worked in the billing a little bit. I didn't do billing, but you take these complaints and owning up to the customer's feeling about it, that they had been wronged, even if there was no intent to wrong them, or even if it even wasn't even your fault. Like, if you refuse to acknowledge that they're feeling injured, you'll never get to any resolution at all, ever. You're done. Right. Is that squares with your work? I mean, you're the expert. Yeah.
Oh no, if people don't feel heard, you can't even begin to even have what you're about to say be heard. They literally, if they're upset about something and you don't let them know that you've heard what they're saying, whether you agree or not, but it's just like, I've heard you, right?
Yeah.
And it usually takes the bigger person, because you're both upset. Oh, you're probably not in a call center, but you're both upset, and one of you has to hear the other one first. Manage yourself to hear the other person first, so then you can be heard, right? If you're both trying to be heard, no one's listening.
What's the best technique that you've encountered for pulling back from the brink? When things are getting really, you're both, in major limbic arrest. And is there any like mental trick or trigger that you can practice that makes you better at pulling back and giving it some space?
Yes, I do have a great answer to that. I think one of the keys is, if you are in limbic arrest, as you said, so fight, when you're feeling threatened and your body's gone into that adrenaline fight, flight, freeze state, you are not going to do well. No one is going to have the conversation they need to have in that moment. And I think the key is to identify that that's where you are. And even if you're not there, that's where the other person is. And be like, let's just take a minute, right?
Yeah.
Take a pause. If you think the other person is fine, you think you can manage yourself, breathe, 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 breathe. And then start asking logical questions. Because if you can start asking yourself logical questions, you get into your frontal cortex. You get into that executive functioning piece of your brain. And you're able to, and you're like, what do I want for myself in this moment, right? It's probably not to be fired or what do I want for my relationship? It's probably not to blow this situation up. It's to make it better. Yeah. So, and how would I act in this moment if those were the things that I wanted? What do I want for the other person? I don't want the other person to, lose their mind here or whatever. And also the other key is, they say this in dispute resolution, this is a key piece in mediation, go to the balcony, just go back, look down, and just try to see the big picture. Because when you're in that, that whole fight, flight, freeze, that when we're in any sort of conflict, anything that we feel threatened, we naturally, our vision just narrows. You just see one thing.
Yeah.
And the problem, which was great when we were trying to not die from a tiger trying to kill us.
It's useful.
It's really useful.
It's very useful. Yeah.
But typically not in today in any kind of workplace situation. So really trying to pull back and look at the big picture of what's really happening. Like I said, this person I spoke to today, look at your boss. She is struggling. Look at that. You're in the space of but just pull back. This is going to end the situation. We're not going to be in this lockdown forever. And it's a really difficult situation. And you have a supervisor who has a bunch of kids at home, who has a lot of pressure on her. so a lot of what you're taking, what's coming at you, isn't even about you.
Right.
Like, and even that just allows the person to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And how much could you, and so often, isn't it true that you can actually relate to the other person, that you're actually experiencing similar things? It's like, yeah, I'm feeling stressed by the same stuff.
Right. So that's the key at the beginning of any kind of dispute. Let's find our common ground. Like, where are we both coming from? What do we both want? You find that common ground, you go from that. We both want to get through this lockdown sane. We both want this project to be a success. Yeah.
So the peacemaking pause, you didn't call it that, but I'm just taking two key words from this conversation. The peacemaking pause that you take, then you said logical, you ask yourself, what is it that I really want? If you want to get fired, that's easy. We know how to do that. We take the chutes and ladders. I'll take the chute. Thank you very much. I remember the guy worked for an airline, and he was done with the airline, and he pulled the chute and drank a beer and said F off to the crew and like got on the chute at the tarmac. I think that was in LA. I'm not sure, but it was hilarious. That was one way to retire. But if you don't want to take the chute out of the plane and you want to keep your job, and you said logical questions. What would be a few examples of like powerful logical questions in a moment like that? What have you seen that works well?
Well, exactly that. What do I want for myself? What do I want for the other person? What do I want for our relationship? What outcome do I want? And how would I behave right now if those were the things that I wanted? And I think I'm quoting somebody. I think that's from some like difficult conversations book or something.
Yeah.
Because I think the good thing about those questions is that you can prepare them before you go in. If you know it, you're going into a difficult situation.
Yeah.
You can prepare yourself so like, and it resets you. You're not going to go in hot. If you know that you don't want to lose your job and you want to build trust in this relationship, you're going to go in and listen to that person and keep your voice low and
I did something one time with a colleague where it was a conversation going off the rails. There was emotion involved, intense frustration. And I remember I did the pause, and those are some great what questions. I love the idea of what, not why. Tasha Eurich, author of Insight, talks about ask what, not why. And I think that's a great point. But in that moment, what I ended up doing that worked for me in that moment was I just stopped. I did the pause, and then I said something like, okay, this is what's going on inside of me right now. And I mentally separated from the person and the object of my frustration and went just purely on me and started revealing the emotions I was feeling. And it totally worked in that case because he could talk about what he was feeling, and then we did get to why those were there, and it wasn't actually because of the other person. And that led us on a path to reconciliation in that moment and moving forward. So I don't know if that...
Yeah, I think that it's always really helpful to let the other person know where you're at, because I think to preface what's happening, this is a really difficult conversation for me. I'm really struggling with this conversation. I'm not sure what to say right now. I feel blindsided. I'm just gonna, just to realize that, I can't actually process what's happening. Can we just regroup? Or, I want this conversation to go well. I want this to be a successful conversation, and I just don't know if I'm, doing it well right now. Maybe.
I'll go a step further, and I feel this really, really strongly. I wish there were more people who would be willing to say, I care about you deeply. I'm really angry, and you're in front of me, and I'm feeling anger towards you right now. And I don't know how much of it is you or me, to be honest with you.
Right.
And I care about you, and I don't want to blow this relationship up over a disagreement right now. and just be willing to say, I care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why that's, but my sense has been that solves a lot of problems, because that's what people need to know. And you got to mean it. It can't be fake, I think. But I don't know. Have you ever seen anything like that work in your, where people are resolving their disputes?
I just think this is why I love early dispute resolution, because when you're down the road further, it's so hard to get to, like, you actually don't care anymore. Like, you're so angry and entrenched in your positions. It's just, but early on, when you still are like, this is going sideways and I really don't want it to. I really care about you. I care about our friendship. And I just want to protect that right now. And I'm not sure how to do that.
The first ombudsman that people have is their team member, right? The pre-ombudsman, before they come to you or an ombudsman, is their colleague sitting next to them, maybe their manager, even if the manager's the one they're upset with. How can a person create a team that does the heavy lifting on that early, to even go earlier in the process, so that you're even reducing the number of people who even go to the, not that you shouldn't go to an ombudsman, but you know what I mean? Creating a team culture of, let's talk about it.
One of the things that I think is really, what's the word? Powerful, is something I saw on a TED Talk, where the guy was talking about gossip and how nobody wants to work in a company, in a team that gossips. Nobody wants to have people talking behind their back and finding things out through the grapevine, right? So can we all as a team agree to not gossip about each other? So the difference between venting and problem solving and gossiping is massive. Because if you have somebody, like, let's say I go to my team member, I say, bah, 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 and I go to another team member, I say, bah, 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 bah. Like, you're creating this worthless, energy sucking situation.
Yeah.
I think if you can stop that gossip, so you set the culture, we as a team do not gossip. You can come to me. I will help you work out how to take the next step, like an ombuds would, right? But if you're coming to me to just gossip, like vent, and not willing to try to proactively resolve it, then don't come to me. I don't want to be that person listening to the gossip.
Right.
And I think creating that team culture where if someone's coming to you, get to say to them, hey, I signed this contract that I'm not going to gossip about anybody on our team. I don't want to be on that team. So I think that, my advice right now would be, go and have a conversation with so-and-so who's bugging you with the way they're chewing gum at their desk. And how do you want to have that conversation? Let me help you work out how to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you can do that? No, there's no way I can do that. Well, I don't know. What are you going to do then? Here's your option. Don't have the conversation. The person's going to, or do have the conversation. Yeah. So you're saying you're not going to you're not going to have the conversation. So that means that you're going to be annoyed by this person, or you're going to just get over it. So what do you want to be? What do you want? Get over it or be annoyed? Oh, okay. But you don't get to just keep talking to other people about this person chewing gum if you're not going to go and have a conversation with them.
Right. So the difference between problem solving, as you said, coming to another person to say, this is an issue I'm having and I need help resolving it. That's different than,
so-and-so just keeps chewing gum. Oh my God, do you hear them? Oh my God, snap, snap, snap. Oh my God, there she goes again. Snap, snap, snap.
Yeah. Well, we've all had those conversations and then you're like, well, how about this? How about that? And they're like, that's clearly not the reason. And we've all done it. I mean, hey, who am I to claim saint status on that too? But so reducing, you can't eliminate it probably, but reducing gossip.
Oh yeah. I mean,
would be a big one. It sounds like
massive, and learning to have these direct conversations in a way that you're owning how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, when you chew your gum and pop, I feel really uptight because I'm trying to concentrate and I need to be able to concentrate to do what I'm doing. And I have a certain amount of dyslexia. So trying to data entry with get distraction constantly is making it difficult for me to do a good job. And I'm just wondering, is there something else you could chew that doesn't pop? Or how do you feel about that? Can we come up with some sort of solution?
Yeah.
Right. So I've totally owned why that thing pisses me off.
Yeah.
And I've given that person the opportunity to respect me and make a change.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they're an asshole. And eventually they'll end up getting fired.
I was going to say, I mean, then people show you who they are. Because if you communicated it, then the water's lowered and it's unambiguous now. You're choosing to make my life, to bother me at this point.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Helena, I want to just thank you again for this time and your generosity and openness and sharing some real wisdom and some practical tips too, those power questions and how to get yourself, recentered in a difficult situation. We might not be able to control the world, but I at least can have some control over what I do. And I think you've given us all something to think about in terms of how we individually can go out and be a peacemaker. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it was going to be such a critical thinking situation. I started drinking wine at the beginning. It's the end of the day, happy hour with Matt. And then I was like, Jesus, I got to think straight. I got to stop drinking.
Hey, whatever gets you through it. I mean, we don't know where these conversations are going to go. We go with what the topic is. So you went there really well and brought a lot of great stories and great value, and just really appreciate it. I'd like to talk to you again about some other stuff that came up.
Of course.
So be great to follow
I'm
up.
Always here on the other side of the world. Japan's
hopefully.
the same size as New Zealand.
Is it the same geographical size, basically?
Yeah. New Zealand has like 5 million and Japan has how many?
Well, 120 million, I think, something like that.
Right.
And
it's
shrinking.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's shrinking pretty fast, though. So it might, it's pretty crazy. So anyway, well, thank you very much.